Hello, and welcome to the Achievement Hunting 101 podcast game club for OXENFREE. This week, we will come to the climactic conclusion of the story and delve into the outcomes our choices have made. And then we'll spend some time discussing the secrets of Edwards Island. To join me for the discussion this week, I have P-Tart TX.
Hey!
And Carpe Adam 79.
Hello.
And thanks to the power of post-production, Freemhole.
I'm here! Better late than never.
Welcome back, guys. Let's get into what happened for this week's playthrough. We climbed down the ladder, and Jonas is talking to us. He's not having a great time. He's confiding in us that this has not been his favorite evening ever. We have a chance to interact with him as he tells us a small joke. There's a magnetophone there hanging out. If you interact with it, they make a comment along the lines of, it's strange to see one of these outside of a time loop, because the only time we've seen them so far has been in the time loops, and that's how we get out. And we finally come to the end of the cave hallway, and we have to unlock the doors.
And Jonas says, hey, listen, if something happens in there, just cut and run. Just go. And my response was like, hey, listen, we are all getting out of here. And Jonas's response to that was, I'm not asking, I'm telling. I'm like, what, do you know something I don't know? Like, what is past this door, Jonas? Like, how are you, and we don't even know each other that well, right? This is my stepbrother. So we're just getting to know each other on this trip. I think it's weird that he's being so just, go ahead and just leave me behind. I don't care.
But I told him, no, I'm just going to make sure everybody gets out. I'm going to try my best. If anything, I'd leave myself.
I was the same way.
On my initial playthrough, I had done the same thing as well. I'm not sure that one is actually a decision point, but sometimes it's hard to tell. This game masks its decisions pretty well, so it could be something more important than I think it is. But I know that the thing with the machine that comes up here next is an important breaking point as far as decisions go. As soon as we unlock the doors, Jonas hears the magnetophone starting to play, and we can hear the magnetophone starting to play too, but instead of just the music that we hear, he is hearing his mother's voice coming from the machine. And this song that's being played is the song that he remembers from his childhood that she used to sing to him. You get the choice, and he's asking you to use the radio on the magnetophone to tune in and let him hear the voice. He can hear it, but he can't quite make out what she's saying. So you can tune the radio, or you can not. Which way did you guys go?
I chose to tune the radio, just merely actually out of my own curiosity, not so much that Jonas begged me and pushed me, and he was kind of getting on my nerves at this point in the game. And I just thought it seemed very troublesome to talk to a dead person. But again, I was curious with all the ghosts and everything else that's going on the island. So that is what I did.
Yeah, I wasn't going to, but he was very persistent. And eventually I was just kind of thinking, well, maybe I'm supposed to. Maybe that's just part of the story. I need to do it. So I finally gave in at the end, and I did tune the radio. And then once I did, I was like, oh, crap. I maybe shouldn't have done that.
Yeah. I had a similar reaction to you, Adam, where my initial gut was, Jonas, this is a terrible idea. I'm not going to do that. Stop asking me. I'm still not doing it. And he asks me again, and I'm like, no. But I tell you what, you ask me one more time, and I'm going to do it. And then he asked me again, so I went ahead and I did it.
Yeah.
It is possible to just proceed and not tune in the radio, but I think it's going to be a fairly common experience to tune the radio there for the first time through. You're given this opportunity to essentially let him speak with his mother, as it were. And this is one of the things that the mirror selves had told us about in previous week's discussion.
I couldn't remember which my responses were to the mirror of okay, what did I say about Jonas and his mom? Crap, and I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I couldn't remember exactly what was in there either.
In our cases, Jonas disappears.
Sure enough, Jonas and the tape player long gone. I'm there by myself. He's out of the picture.
My recollection is that if you do not play the radio, he's going to stay behind and try and listen. He's fascinated by this one way or the other, and he does not join you in the cave either way. But we go through the blast door and enter the cave, and I think really the first thing that pops out in the cave is that there's extra graffiti. On our very first week, we talked about how there was graffiti in the cave, and I didn't mention what it said. What it said as you came along was, see a man about a dog. And now there's new graffiti in the cave that reads, saw the man, but not the dog.
I did not catch that.
Who was the man? Yeah, so you get in there and there's Clarissa just sitting in the cave.
In the cave, Clarissa starts talking to us immediately. The ghosts have possessed her, and she's speaking for them in her voice. And one of the things she says is kind of interesting. The truth is, we could have left whenever we wanted. We are not prisoners to the cave. Not in whole. So they're saying essentially that they didn't need to be doing this to leave. They're just doing this because it's fun.
And then this says, we just want to escape because this feels like dying again. And Alex, I had her choice to says, well, you're just going to have to do it again because she's going to fix it and the ghosts are going to have to die again.
So I wrote down my conversation with Clarissa here because she brings up the fact that I made that deal with them, where I said, like, you take Clarissa and everyone else gets to go home. And then I switched and I told Jonas, yeah, no. I didn't think they were gonna be truthful to that, so I'm not gonna hold them to that. And so the conversation I had with Clarissa really revolved around that topic. I said my friends wouldn't have taken it. Her response is, "Get better friends." And then Clarissa's gone. Like she just got mad. I don't know, and just up and disappeared. And all that was left was this little triangle. So I was kind of like, while I'm looking at this, part of me was like, I should just leave. Like, I wonder if I could just leave this room right now.
In order to proceed, we're going to have to tune the radio to open up the dimensional rift. We've tuned the radio in the cave before, and we had a very intense experience where we made a triangle that appeared out of nowhere, essentially. This one's an order of magnitude more intense. Instead of just creating a triangle, we create a triangle of triangles of triangles. It's fractalized on us.
Yes, I have mega triangle in all caps written on my notes for this one.
Fractaling all over.
And then rocks are falling. The triangle seems to have its own gravitational field because it's pulling the rocks that are falling back up into it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
So we enter the dimensional rift.
We're in total blackness, and oh, I can control this. Okay, let's just go. Well, it's a platformer type. I'm just going to go right, and we'll see what happens. And then sure enough, hey, wait, I'm underwater. There's a submarine over here. What's going on?
We're underwater, and we can see the submarine. We get to witness the USS Kenalo implode. There's a very bright light, and then the submarine is gone. I think the thing that stood out for me the most as I watched this happen was the very red light at the top of the submarine.
Gosh, I wonder what you do with a red light. So I was like, oh, quick, all right, here we go. Let's just fire up this radio. And I was gone. It warped me before I could even do anything.
Yeah, that was the submarine exploding, right, from the nuclear reactor or whatever it was.
Right, so the experimental nuclear reactor has gone awry, and the vessel implodes, and Philadelphia experiment style, these guys are killed and or sent into another dimension and or turned into ghostly entities. Whatever it is, this is the cause of all our troubles. Now the scene jumps after we get out of the blinding white flash. Now we're on the cliffside, and Clarissa is there again, ready to talk to us, but she has two entities behind her. Clarissa's the one talking to us, but the ghosts are there menacing right behind her.
I said, where am I? Home. You are home. Almost, anyway. Ugh, creepy.
She queries, you're here to close the hole?
Don't they chime in? It's just not that simple.
My notes here are really just lots of talking. Like, I was trying to talk them down. Like, I was trying to convince them what they were doing and that they're taking us and, absorbing, that they didn't need to do it.
All right, well, once more, the scene is going to jump, and we're back on the ocean floor, only this time, instead of a submarine or the red light in the background, we have the dimensional rift in the background. We can see the triangle and the cave through the triangle beyond. And the choices that you make here, I think, are really the definitive ones of the game. Ultimately, you can have a wide range of conversations here. The actual discussion options, the conversation options change depending on which of the Adler notes you've read, if any of them.
Oh, I did not know that. I know I said last week I had 0 letters, but when I went to finish the game this morning, apparently I didn't go far enough down the ladder for it to save, so I actually got to go wander around and go find all the letters, and then I went back down the hatch.
Lucky. Yeah, I still had a few letters to go, so I'm gonna have to look for them again in my next playthrough.
Yep, and I still forgot to hug everybody.
If you're missing the Adler letters, obviously there are, guides available to them, but if you want to try and find them yourself without a guide, they're around fairly regularly, and you can tune your radio as you walk around to the cardinal signal, which is 140.1, if my recollection is correct. The first note tells you. And that will tell you that on that screen, there is an Adler letter or not, and it gives you a clue. It tells you a couple of things, and then it spells out in a phonetic alphabet something specific about where you should be looking for the letter. So if you're on a screen that you think a letter is, and you don't know where it is, you can use that in-game hint system to actually locate it.
Oh, man. Why didn't I figure that out?
You just aimlessly wandered around the island.
Yeah, I could see them. They're pretty noticeable, I thought, when you're walking by. But I just didn't wander around the entire island to try and find them.
They sparkle.
Yeah. Pretty, as you would say.
And I'm like trying to talk to Clarissa and it's not Clarissa at this time, but I'm trying to talk my way out of it. And there's clearly there's a big, essentially an exit point behind me. So I feel like at any time I want, I could just leave. It's like, I got to see this to the end. I need to, I don't have all the answers that I want. And so I got to continue this conversation and keep talking. And so I just stood there and I kept talking him down. And every kind of section, every bit that you were talking through, a new person appeared. A faceless person appeared in the lower corner there behind the rocks.
Through our finding of the Adler notes or not, we have come to learn the name of 3 of the officers aboard the ship who were drowned, or exploded, or imploded, or whatever. And we can ask them specifically for help as we talk to the entities. We can either call out to Calvin Gilbert, who was an electrician aboard the Kanaloa, and he was the first of the sunken who found a way to communicate from wherever they are back to our reality. And those radio signals were originally heard by the students at the Army Communications School, which we had that incident with when we played Hangman. They all assumed that these were pranks, but he was the one who made the first calls. We can call out to Henry Griffin, who was identified in the call signals by his call sign, and he is the superior officer who is responsible for bringing Anna, Maggie's friend, to join her on Edwards Island. And we can reach out to Francis Salter, who is an engineer who is likely the person who sent the distress call from the Kanaloa that proved to be the fateful demise of the vessel. Or you can call out to none of them because you haven't read any of the letters.
You guys forgot about us. Everyone forgot about us. I wanted my life. I wanted, to... I didn't... Do you think I wanted my life to get cut short? Everyone forgot about us, blah, blah, blah. And my comment, essentially my big comment to that one was, this whole town was built for you. There's a monument. There's, this was a naval base, and they have built a town because of what ended up happening here. And you are an important part of that town. And that's where it opened the door to talk to Francis.
In my playthrough, there was a big long discussion about how the ghosts wanted to be remembered and how important it was for them to be remembered. I didn't remember specifically how they said they want to be remembered, but I chose for Alex to point out that Maggie remembered. She went through all that effort, but they pretty much came down to the conclusion that, every timeline that they looked at of Maggie's, she couldn't figure out how to help the ghosts. They were still stuck. And I know I wrote down something else that they were okay with Alex going because Alex reminded them of Maggie.
Yeah, Alex and Maggie are very much on the same wavelength, whatever it is that they are doing, they seem to have a lot in common despite the generational difference. For that question, I responded differently in my playthrough, and I'm fortunate, that I had my playthrough recorded because there's no way I'd remember this. So I had a chance to rewatch it recently in prep for this, and my answer was that you weren't forgotten. Look, they made a monument to you and are remembering you and your heroic or accidental, but valorous death for your country in wartime. And the ghosts don't want to hear anything about that. They refer to the monument as a hunk of metal and a balm to salve their own pride for the loss that they suffered against their pride, rather than the actual loss of the human lives. That they made a mistake and this tragedy happened rather than the tragedy of their lives being lost. Ultimately, though, they're giving you a choice. You have a choice of choosing to leave Clarissa behind and just walk away, or closing the rift, pulling out the radio and tuning into the source from within. But the ghosts tell you that if you do this, you may save your friends on the other side, but you yourself will be trapped in the time loop forever. Which choice do you make?
Tuned it, baby!
So the choice that I made, I chose to pretty much, sacrifice myself for my friends. And then they followed up saying, okay, you could go, and my friends could go, but they wanted Clarissa. And again, I said, no, you can't have Clarissa. And then again, that's where they said, okay, well, you might not make it out, just like you said.
How about you, Adam? What did you do when you were making the choice? Did you walk out or did you tune in?
No, I did the same thing. I tuned in. I told them no, I wasn't going to sacrifice Clarissa. I wasn't going to trust them. Plus, I did not. I'm not the type of person that I could just say, oh, well, she's screwed. I was more of just thinking, take my chances, try to save everyone.
Do you want that person to be gone, like, eternally? Plus, we know that she used to be normal and human and super chill from, the time loops we had from the previous summer.
I think the choice of the word there of eternal is actually really important. The choice to take the deal is perhaps deeper reaching than you might realize. It turns out is even more profound than that. It is essentially eternal. As you close the temporal rift, the ghosts are talking to us again.
Time out.
Alone.
We
Are all
on
the same.
side.
Poor girl.
This is for my friends.
Malison.
Youth.
It
Is the road of
the middle. We all play.
by
Same.
design.
Poor girl. Do they mean Alex? Or do they mean Clarissa? Malison. Youth. Now, Malison is a word that a lot of people don't know and might think it's just a typographical error or something, but it is actually just an archaic word. It basically means that they're saying this is the curse of youth. Again, they're hyper-focused on games.
I guess that makes sense. Yeah, they are as sadistic as they are. Yeah, you definitely see that youthful aspect with the various games, especially like Hangman and Kick the Ball. That's very, that's children's game.
You do wake up at the lakeside now. The very first thing that pops up on the screen is a new cipher. It's // XX tech XM BX KAUTX.
Okay, so that was supposed to be there. Because I looked at that and I was like, I don't know, what? Is that somebody's gamer tag? What the hell is that thing?
And then we have a series of interactions where we get to play the mirror. This is where we make the choice that will show up in someone else's game if we are their mirror buddies.
Yeah, it was on the flip side of everything.
As far as Jonas, then I said to let Jonas talk to his mother, and as far as the Clarissa one, I think I said I didn't say to break up with her. And then what's the other one?
Stay or leave for Michael.
I think I said stay.
All right, I told future Alexes that Michael and Clarissa should stay together. I told them to let Jonas talk to his mom and for Michael to go out on his own.
I was just trying to answer what I told myself, even though it wasn't me, right? It was a different gamer tag, but like I was trying to mirror me, like, hey, don't forget to do this next time, or I don't even know. But I tried to answer the same. Although that being said, that I didn't do the same for what I told Jonas. So maybe I switched that one. I don't quite remember, but it was like clearly they told me don't let him talk to his mom, and I did, and he's gone.
It's tough because you've got to juggle what you were told, what you decided to do, and then what you tell the future you to do.
And can I just add, like, when I realized what was going on, like how we were telling the future Alexes, how we saw other people play, like, my mind was just blown on so many levels. Like, that is so clever and so cool that the developers did that. Like, just integrated that and it just came full circle and it was just awesome.
It adds layers of nuance to it that would not be there if that had been some other process.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. Part of me wishes I had known what was going on so that I could appreciate it more in the moment. But you have that other appreciation when you get it, when it all comes for full circle and it makes sense. You appreciate it. Like that was one of those moments where when that part came up and you start answering all those things, you're on the other side of the mirror. I was like, oh, that makes so much sense now. So it was cool, but like I was going back and forth. It was like I was conflicted because part of me was like, man, I wish I had understood that then because I feel like it would have changed how I experience things, but I still appreciate it because it's really just a cool concept, something I haven't seen before.
And I wish I would have paid more attention to those ev-
Me too.
events, like paid attention to who the gamer tag was, what they told me to do, what I actually ended up doing, and then finally what my advice was, like almost a three-way comparison between each choice. But again, like when those occurred the first time in the game, I didn't understand the significance of them.
And then we go to that final flashback with Michael. So we interact with him in his room, his loft room, which is interestingly triangular.
Yeah.
Yes, I wrote that down in my notes as well.
And he wants to know what we think about that decision that we just gave advice to someone else about. Should he leave or should he stay?
So like I couldn't tell with this, this cloud world that we're walking around in, like what's reality and what's not, this plays into some of the ideas I have at the end about what exactly, like, I mean, my brain is trying to figure out what exactly is happening and trying to put all these pieces together because it's coming fast now.
I told him that he should leave and move in with Clarissa.
I was so conflicted through all of that. Like I still didn't say that. I still wanted him to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I found myself like as I'm answering his questions, like I would answer one and I'm like, man, I wish I'd answered that differently. And just I think I was because just the way that it is, I was just kind of overanalyzing it maybe. I don't know. But I kind of wish I had because like he was talking about running away and getting an apartment. I didn't want him to do that, but I wanted him to stay with her. I wanted him to live, you know, is really what it all boiled down to.
I continued to say you should leave. So in this instance, I see Michael, and it's like, look, I wouldn't be here in this loop talking to you again because of everything I've experienced unless you went away. So I said this once, and I'm going to say it again. You should just go. Just go do your thing. Even though I know it ultimately ends up in his death.
Yeah, I think that was the right way to go with it too. I think I was being more selfish with from Alex's perspective that, she wants her brother around, and the fact that he's dead, that kind of that just amplifies that whole thing. Is like, well, he's dead, so of course, she wants him to be there because he's not now.
Yeah, I don't think that's wrong at all. That's actually a solid logic for your decision. And I feel like, again, that's the beauty of this game is I don't think it's necessarily right or wrong. It's just your own play experience.
Yeah.
After our final flashback with Michael, we wake up on the boat. It's 7 a.m. Jonas has carried our body from the cave somehow, and we are on the ferry boat, and the rest of our friends are here most of the time. Once they realize Alex is waking up, everyone starts to talk about how things went on the island, how it affected them, what was the experience like, what are they planning to do next? Are they going to tell people about this, or are they going to keep it quiet?
Yeah, no, this is no need to say anything. We had an experience. Let's just move on with our lives.
I decided to keep it a secret, that no one would believe it anyway, and they would think that we were crazy.
I made the same decision as well, just to keep it to that friend group because, like,
Mm-hmm.
we went through a very traumatic event. Why do we want to, like, trudge that up? And again, nobody's probably going to believe you because I know Nona's like, oh, book
Right.
deal, but it's like, no, like, it was a horrible traumatic event. I mean, it was not a fun, pleasant, memory or trip. So why continue, to dredge up that wonderful experience we had on Edwards Island?
I also chose to keep it a secret, but my reasoning on it was that if you tell people that this has happened, there's going to be some curiosity seekers who try and have it happen for themselves. And I did not want anyone else to go and start playing with the ghosts.
That's a good way of looking at it too. Like, on one hand, you'd think, well, if you don't let people know, what if someone else stumbles upon what you did? But by telling people, it's more likely for that to happen.
Yeah, there will always be people who will stumble upon it. You can't stop those, but you can try and mitigate the looky-loos, perhaps.
Yeah, but pretty much the island, like, no one goes there anymore. Like, we were some of the few people that ever even go.
It does seem to be a annual trip for the juniors or seniors of the high school here in the town to go for these beach
Yeah,
parties.
true. Good point.
And so who knows how many generations of these kids have gone through and done exactly what we just did and then decided to keep it secret themselves. Because we
Yeah,
know they left the signals behind, that they found the anomalies, they played around with the radio on the island.
true.
True.
Like, how many other kids have actually gone through the exact same thing, and how many kids maybe are gone now because of it?
I think there might be some because that anomaly that you found a couple of recordings ago, Adam, where it talked about, was it four teenagers that were died in a
Oh
car in the
yeah,
water?
yeah.
So is that,
That's a good.
yeah, is that like another group of teens that was on the island and, I mean, perished in the water from the ghost?
Maybe. The whole time I'm thinking it's part of that group and something happened there, but maybe it's a different group altogether that has gone through the same thing.
You have to come to one last photo. You're going to get together for one last group photo. And this is where something interesting happens in that Ren starts to quote from the book that he had left on the ferry boat. This is a book by Mark Twain, and the quote is, "When I was younger, I remembered everything, whether it had happened or not. But soon I shall be that I cannot remember any but the things that never happened." This is the same thing that Ren was actually saying already when we were starting to wake up. And that's one of those first clues that time is still a little bit out of sync. Even though we've sealed up the temporal rift in the cave, we're not out of the woods yet.
I did catch that he repeated that because as soon as you get on the boat, that's the first thing he says. And I was like, oh, that's a really fitting, interesting quote for the game. Like, it really kind of ties the theme together. And then he says it again, and I'm like, oh, interesting.
And in that part, is that one of the areas where you have that dialogue option to say that you've already said that?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's what I thought. Okay.
yeah, and I did say that.
Yeah.
And that's basically the last thing you say in that portion of gameplay. And the rest is epilogue. Now, the quote by Mark Twain there is actually fairly interesting because this is a different version of the quote than was originally written. Twain had a couple of versions of this quote written. The current version, the one that they are using in the game, is all about how our memory sort of changes and we don't remember things as well as we get older. But the original quote was actually somewhat different, where he had these fantastic memories of his childhood that he knew had to be false, and so that he in his adult life was discarding those false memories because he knew them to be factually inaccurate, that they couldn't possibly be there despite the fact that his brain was convinced that they were real. So the actual original quote had been, "When I was younger, I remembered everything, whether it had happened or not. But soon I shall be that I cannot remember any but that which happened." So the complete opposite. And I found that particularly interesting because obviously the quote plays beautifully into the theme, as you were saying, Pete-Hart, but the fact that this quote itself has appeared in both variations and there's the confusion around it, I think also plays perfectly with how this game all comes together as well. We get our results. We get pie graphs.
I was shocked that this stuff came up. It was super fun. I love data.
This is just for Xbox, but the percentages are pretty consistent across all different platforms from what I've been able to see.
Oh, yeah?
The first ones that come up are Nona and Ren, and they have a two-part pie graph. They're either dating or not. And as we already discussed last time, we know for you, Freem, they're not
No
dating.
dates. Yeah, 36%.
Yeah, getting them to date is by far the more common situation. And Pete-Hart, I know you got them dating.
Yes, I did. I did some good matchmaking.
I'm jealous.
Clarissa comes second. There are 5 possible outcomes for Clarissa. The most common outcome that I've seen is the situation where you've managed to make up with Clarissa. You recognize that, even though she's treating you terribly, it's for somewhat understandable reasons, and you've tried to make amends, and you didn't sacrifice her to the ghosts. She gets a dog, she goes off to college and studies literature, and you talk to each other very, very rarely, but you talk to each other once in a while.
That's what I got.
The second option is that you make up, but she's dating Michael. I'll come back to that one in a moment. The third option is that she's gone. No one, except you, remembers that she even existed. So when we were talking about your decision in the cave, and you mentioned that being an eternal choice, if you choose to sacrifice her, it doesn't just kill her. No one else even remembers she existed.
Jeez, that's wild.
Fourth option, we did not make up with her. Clarissa hates Alex, and she drops out of her high school college situation and goes off to the other coast, and is doing something in a boutique or something. And the fifth option is that she and Michael are still both alive, and you are fairly friendly with her, but she is no longer dating Michael. And that's probably the rarest of all the outcomes. So Michael's the third, and he's skipped if you did not find a way to bring him back. Because you're playing around with time loops, he is possibly alive now. There's 3 options for Michael. The first one is that he's dead. Again, by far the most common situation, you did not bring Michael back. And so this part is then skipped, and he's not in the photo. But there's also that he's alive and dating Clarissa again, or still. And the third is that he's alive and not dating Clarissa anymore.
I didn't even know it was an option to bring him back. Like, that kind of actually blows my mind there. Like, I didn't know that was a thing.
Don't worry, you'll know because it's an achievement.
Yeah, I realized it afterward, like after making the decisions and stuff, and I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, it sounds like you were really close.
I would love to have brought him back, but I didn't. I stayed in town myself and did not bring him back.
But you got a stepbrother, and you got an achievement for that, right?
Yeah.
No, Jonas is our next one. The first one is that he's bonded with us strongly, And so much so that we don't even call him stepbrother anymore. We just call him brother. The first one of this is Michael's still gone, so basically he's taken Michael's place and he's our new brother, although still technically a stepbrother. The second option is that we have bonded with him just as strongly, but this time Michael is alive, so we call him our other brother, but only when Michael isn't around because we don't want to upset Michael. A third option is that even though we spent a lot of time in this trauma-inducing experience with Jonas, we've managed to be alienated. We didn't get along too great. And Michael has remained dead. And this is the we see each other at Thanksgiving because that's what you do with your family kind of outcome. And the fourth option is that you found a way to bring Michael back, but also still alienated Jonas, in which case you essentially never see Jonas again, ever.
We were not.
You see him at Thanksgiving.
Yep, thanks, but no thanks.
Yeah, that achievement, though, there's an achievement for bonding with him, and that achievement popped for me, even though I also got the see him at Thanksgiving. It was interesting because I must have been right on the cusp where he didn't dislike me and I didn't dislike him.
I got that achievement
but
too.
We weren't friendly either.
I got that achievement too. And I thought that was,
So
I thought
I think that was a little glitched.
Yeah, he's my stepbrother. Okay, yeah, I guess technically. I guess technically my parents still got married together, but like I don't treat him like a stepbrother.
That's interesting that you said on the first one that she refers him as brother. Mine was just the opposite, that Jonas referred to me as sister. He went to school across town and we saw each other occasionally.
After you get pie graphs of how you did versus everyone else and the options that all the characters have for their outcomes, you make your final decision.
This is, telling the story of all the people in the picture. This is what happened here, here, and here, here. And she's like, and I left town to go to school. I left.
Right, you have to make the choice.
Yeah.
You get to decide.
Yeah.
So you can leave, you can stay.
So I left. I left town for school.
So you left
and then
too.
all of a sudden, the screen had that static. It looked quick scratch, like a record scratch, only it was visual. And Alex says, "Oh yeah, geez, man, I need to go get Ren and this kid Jonas for a trip to Edwards Island." I was like, "Wait, what? What's happening?" And at that point, and I don't know if this was just because like I got totally thrown for a loop, no pun intended. But like I felt like the kid's eyes looked red in that picture, like looked more red than normal in that picture. Is that? Am I just like projecting that because of the events that had happened? Like they didn't change, did they?
I can't tell you. I don't know.
I chose to take a year off. After all that craziness, I figured huge life changes. Your brother passed away, new stepbrother, crazy island experience. It would be a good idea to just kind of chill, get, back to myself and take a year off.
If I remember right, I decided to stay home but go to school. I didn't take the year off. Wanted to get back into some normalcy.
Alex starts talking about, I have to go on a boat trip and I don't know how I feel about it. I'm going with my new stepbrother and
Yeah.
I hope he's not mean or weird or anything. As you return to the main menu to play the game again, you'll have a choice to continue the timeline, which is basically to start a new game. But you, as the player, know that it's just another iteration of Alex's loop.
Yeah, so like literally all this happened. Well, quote unquote happened. This was a path that she took, and it clearly was, quote unquote, the wrong one. Because she's got to do it again. Groundhog Day.
And Alex, the character, seems to know. Like, she doesn't know, but she notices that something's not right, is the way I took it. Because she's not just outright saying that I've already done all this. It's just she notices the familiarity of it, though.
This is what I was talking about, actually, when I first started the conversation about how the experiences we've had in the game will shape how we understand and perceive the game itself. Those decisions, this is where the fact that I had the recorder on for my first playthrough was so critical for me. I was able to go back and see those options have always been there. I just didn't notice it because it didn't mean anything to me.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a little disheartening when I got to the end And I thought they truly escaped, and it turns out they are actually just stuck in a time loop, and it goes back to the very beginning. And again, that's where
Well, we can.
I have that whole Groundhog's Day thing written down. Like, it's starting again, but maybe we could try some different things.
One of the problems with a time loop is that if we're going to be in the time loop and pull ourselves out of it and push our friends out of it, then we have to be in the time loop in order to be the ones pushing our friends out of it. And so it's quite possible that there is some version of reality outside of this time loop where all of our friends are in fact safe because of what we did. And remember, the decision that we made in the cave to seal up the temporal rift was going to seal us into their time loop for forever. So we are actually just seeing the consequences of that choice play out perfectly. And during the credits, you can see all the wonderful people who worked on this game, but they also give a spot in the credits for the people who assisted you in your game, in your playthrough. The gamer tags that we talked about earlier that showed up in your game to give you advice in the mirrors, they're in your credits.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I had one person played 2 roles, and then I had one other person, and I cannot remember now who the other one was. It's driving me crazy.
I didn't know they were in the credits. Dang it, I missed the gamer tags yet again.
Will it be the same ones on the second playthrough, or does that change?
You'll have new people
Interesting. Okay.
giving you new advice.
Okay.
Maybe this advice will be better. All right, some follow-up questions for you guys. Question number 1, did you like this game?
Yeah.
Yes.
Very much so. I very much like this game. It was super interesting, creepy, super creepy, and I usually don't like creepy games.
All right, second question, kind of related then. Give me a rating.
I'd say 4.5.
I was going to say 4. Actually, maybe it should be a 4.5 because I've never had a game actually give me goosebumps over and over and over again. Like just the creep factor or something. There's something that they did that no game has ever done before.
I like a 10-point scale. That's just me. And I would go 8.5, 9.
All right, I want to take a few minutes and run through some of the extras in the game. And this is going to give me an opportunity to peel back another layer. Because the game itself is the experience you just had, but there are many, many secrets on Edwards Island, and I want to share a few of them with you, but also to sort of shine a light on some of those things. Let's start with the collectibles, because you need to get those for achievements anyway. There are 12 anomalies and 13 Adler letters. And we already mentioned the Adler letters, and those give you extra backstory and nuance and a couple of dialogue options in that final sequence. As we've discussed previously, the anomalies are those little cairns, piles of stones, where you tune your radio and hear a strange snippet. There are 10 of them that are named and numbered. The beginning letter is the one that's important. This is a phonetic alphabet of sorts, but it's not the same phonetic alphabet that was being used in the game for the hints for the Adler letters. It's a different one. So if you organize them by order alphabetical, it's Able 9.
Something keeps touching my leg in the water, and I don't know what it is. Can we just go into the cave now?
No, sure. I just want you to have a good time. Wait, I think there's something down there.
Wait, Jason, don't trip. There's a... Jason?
Baker 1 is about the cars.
Yesterday, the remains of 4 bodies were discovered in 2 cars submerged west of Cape Mears. How the cars got in the water, no one...
Charlie 6.
Charlie 6.
Every individual, it is maintained, is enveloped in a radiance invisible to the carnal eye and only perceived by the soul accustomed to it.
Dog 9.
Dog Niner.
Baychimo, Thresher, Peterhoff, Arizona.
This one is, I think, probably the first one that's really interesting to me, because it reads a bit like a numbers station, which a lot of the stuff in the game feels like to me at times. And if you're not familiar with a number station, it's weird radio signals that are probably being used by spy agencies to transmit codes from agents on one side of the world to the other. And most of the time, they're probably just sending out disinformation, but it's just full of numbers and words that have no meaning, and they are intensely creepy, especially to me.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you've watched the latest season of Stranger Things, how they kind of pick up a similar broadcast and try to decipher what it is. It's kind of interesting.
Bechimo is a ghost ship that was abandoned off the coast of Alaska in 1921, and it remained off the coast of Alaska, surprisingly intact, afloat, for many, many years. It has been lost since. No one knows where it is. It's probably sunk at this point. Alaska started a search for it back in 2006 to see if they could find out where it is now or sunk, and they haven't found it since. But Ghost Ship is interesting because the context of Ghost Ship in this game is meaningful. And in fact, all of these names are vessels. The USS Thresher was the single largest sub-casualty. It was, go figure, a nuclear reactor problem, and 129 crew members died as a result of the problem there, including some dock workers. The USS Peterhoff was a victim of friendly fire during the Civil War. And that is something that's going to trigger you if you've been reading the Adler letters, which we'll get to a little bit later on. And then there's, of course, the USS Arizona, which was one of the single largest losses in the bombing of Pearl Harbor. 1,177 people died when the USS Arizona was bombed by Japanese forces at Pearl Harbor. So, naval disasters, friendly fire, submarines with nuclear accidents, and ghost ships. Those are not just random words.
That's interesting. I recognized Arizona out of that list, but you providing more context, it does fit in with the premise of the game. Like it's very interesting.
It's just another example of just the extra care that they took in putting this game together. You know, it's very, you can't really say anything is just throwaway. Everything's really got a purpose.
Easy 3.
Easy 3.
If indeed he find fault with anything, or expose it, with charity, the abbot shall discuss it prudently.
Lest perchance God has sent him for this very thing.
This is a direct quote from St. Benedict's Rules for Monasteries, Fox 6.
Fox 6.
Well, how do you know you're Bobby Dunbar?
I know who I am, and I know who you are, and nothing else makes a difference.
Do you know who Bobby Dunbar is?
No, I don't.
I've heard the name, but I could not remember the details. And I've heard this story before.
Bobby Dunbar is a missing child case from a long time ago. He probably died in an accident, but the police went looking for him, and eventually they found a child who looked a lot like him, but was basically being horribly abused by his family, or what was claiming to be his family. And so they rescued this child from the abusive situation and gave him to the Dunbar family as essentially replacement for Bobby Dunbar. And many, many, many years later, DNA testing has proved that this was in fact not Bobby Dunbar. But, because of the circumstances, everybody played along with it at the time. So this is a case that even now has got some resonance, but the piece that's being quoted here about knowing who you are and knowing who I am, etc., and what that means plays a lot into the identity ideas that are being played with here in OXENFREE as well. But the Bobby Dunbar story is well worth looking into as well if you're curious about true crime stories.
I love me some true crime. It's what gets me through my workday.
George 3.
George 3.
It'll be good having somebody else here to watch after the grounds, Bill.
I was at Park Warden in Grants Pass, so this'll be old hat to me. William Marshall Marshall, a local park ranger working in Edwards Forest, killed himself today after what his wife describes as a years-long battle with depression. His body was found hanging from a tree.
So, if you read other materials in the game, the Russell family has a history with how the land became a park on Edwards Island to start with. And now, probably Tim Russell, the guy who did that park thing, his son comes back and is, walking the grounds of the park, and his wife says he's battling with depression. Maybe the ghosts have gotten to him, and he commits suicide.
That's interesting. They said he hung himself, right?
Yes.
That's Clarissa was hung at one point in the game, wasn't she?
She was.
Yeah, when I heard that one play over the radio, I was like, oh man, this sounds like somebody that definitely had some experiences with these ghosts and maybe wasn't so fortunate.
Is that where that weird chair came from?
Who knows? Who knows where the chairs came from? How 7.
A low-frequency radio wave is incident upon a body of radio waves travel forever until it is absorbed by matter or a person.
This one also fits in with Charlie 6, where they're both kind of digging at an idea called radiothesia, which is basically trying to heal your body by inflicting radio waves upon it. And obviously that doesn't work, but, quack medicine always finds people who are interested in it.
Right.
Item 3.
Item 3.
Teddy also registered images on objects, places, and persons on magnetic tape, taking into consideration the impossibility of...
This one doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, so maybe there's some more to it that I wasn't able to discover. The only thing I can think of is that perhaps this is a reference to the magnetophones that show up periodically, throughout our time loops, and they're in the cave at the very end.
That's what I thought of as well when you had just read that. I immediately thought of the tapes that we had to rewind to get, time back on pace.
Jig 3.
Jig 3.
The island is famously named after Colonel Caleb Edwards for his glorious and triumphant slaughtering of countless families during one of the great ethnic cleansings of the 20th century. The forceful removal of an ignorant people to make space for destined holders is a time-honored tradition in our still young country. And you will be a part of that heritage, Alex. Do not resist. It will be over soon.
This one is pretty clearly the ghosts trying to talk directly to Alex through the radio. They call her out by name. It's very much in their tone. It's pulling the history of the island that they're familiar with and playing with it in an absolutely horrible way. And this one also has one of the first cases of backmasking in the game that we can catch. After Do Not Resist, It Will Be Over Soon, there's some garbled noise at the end of the recording. If you play that portion backwards, it says Do Not Resist again, but it's backwards. So those are the 10 that are numbered and lettered. The other 2 that you can find are just a noise, which sounds like a song, the Swedish Rhapsody number 1. But if you speed it up to 400%, which you're not going to be able to do in game, obviously, so this is what people have done outside the game because people are nuts.
Wow.
You hear the ghost saying, "You have until dawn."
Huh.
And then the last anomaly is Alex's voice asking, "How many are you?"
Yeah, I got that one.
And as I said, if you put them in alphabetical order, as I just did, you end up with this: 9, 1, 6, 9, 3, 6, 3, 7, 3, 3. That's a phone number.
Oh, it's a phone number.
Oh boy.
It's 91 OXENFREE. Welcome to the ARG. There is an augmented reality game for OXENFREE.
Huh. That's awesome.
It's a Google Voice number. The area code is Sacramento, but it's not actually in Sacramento, most likely because it's Google Voice. When this game was launched, the phone number would link to the start of the augmented reality game and a couple of clues that you could follow. The augmented reality game is over, but the phone number is still active. Why don't you go ahead and call it, Freem?
Is this going to scare me? 916933733. All right. California number. Here we go.
Hello. Please state your name after the tone, and Google Voice will try to connect you.
This is Freem. It's ringing.
Alex, this is Alex. And listen, don't come to Edwards Island. Whatever you do, just don't come here. Stay home. Stay safe.
Who was that? I couldn't tell whose voice that was. Was that Clarissa? Or was that
That's Alex's
me?
voice.
Was that Alex? Okay.
The message is from Alex.
That's messed up.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. That's wow. Yeah, the game developers are very, very clever and creative. That is amazing.
No, we're not done yet. It didn't used to be a message from Alex. The first thing that you heard on the line, back when the ARG was active, the augmented reality game is over now, so it's gone on to this message instead, which is going to be what it keeps until they decide to stop keeping the phone number up, which I don't see happening anytime soon, so it's probably going to keep working for a long time. What you heard on the voicemail message was a snippet from the soundtrack. You heard a tune called Beacon Beach, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a snippet of that right now. So that's probably familiar to you guys from hearing it in the game.
Absolutely. I was literally about to say when I was playing earlier today, I was like, man, I'm really digging this song. Like, it's peppy, but ominous, and it has a hint of creep all at the same time.
Yeah, Scientific did an excellent job of composing the music for this game. I've said that before, and I'm going to repeat it, because what you just heard there is a song with a beat that is Morse code.
Oh.
Oh my gosh. I wondered because there are times when what you will hear Morse code when you tune the radio too. And anytime I've heard that, I was like, man, I wish I knew and had the time to try and figure out what that says.
Would you like me to tell you what the Morse code says?
Yes,
please.
yes, please.
The Morse code there in that song is Maggie, Maggie, Maggie. All is lost. All is lost. All is lost.
So it almost sounds like it could be a message from Anna.
Yes.
Being sent out. Said she got trapped in there. Because, I mean, like, the ghost wanted Clarissa, and I'm just assuming that's the same thing that happened to Anna when her and Maggie went back.
I think that's a very good interpretation of it.
Yeah, so Maggie decided to sacrifice Anna. Or did Anna sacrifice herself?
Well, that's a little bit of a sore subject, shall we say. The Adler letters are where we can figure a little bit about that. The Adler letters tell us a story in the collectibles that we find there of how the USS Callow was sunk, Maggie's role in that, and ultimately how she and Anna investigated those radio signals that were coming in from Calvin that we talked about earlier on, and then how in their investigations Anna was lost. Maggie says in her own letters that the last thing that Anna saw was herself, Maggie, running away. She was fleeing because something about it terrified her, she couldn't deal with it or whatever. But Anna has a slightly different take on it. The other snippets of Morse code that you've heard throughout the game when you're tuning around in the radio, the most important ones are all introduced by a snippet of music from The Entertainer, Joplin's The Entertainer. You can also do some interesting things about ordering these, because the snippet of entertainer that is played before the Morse code, the tone changes, the pitch. So if you order them from highest pitch to lowest pitch, you get what appears to be the chronological order of the Morse code texts. Her first Morse code message comes through, "Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world." Quoting General MacArthur. It's like, hey, I made it. Did we do it? Then the next one, we hear this one outside of Hardin Tower. "Be sure you have correct time." Okay, that can be meaning a lot of different things. Still no confirmation, though, that this is in fact Anna. Next one. "Sorry that I went ahead. Not your fault. Love, Anna." This is where I'm saying perhaps Anna has a different interpretation of it. She thinks she went ahead rather than Maggie running away. They were trying to do it together, and they got separated, and she went on ahead when she was not yet supposed to. But things are going to take a turn for the darker here. A little bit later on, another one comes out. "Still here. Cannot move. Very cold. Love, Anna." A little bit later on. "Hard to think. Are you there? Love, Anna." And then it goes downhill pretty quickly. "Getting scared. Losing things. Love." Next up. "Losing. But. Lughand." She's losing her sense of herself and her ability to communicate successfully with Morse code.
Yep.
Yeah, it's Yeah, sorry, like just had the epiphany. That's the exact thing that have happened with those the ghosts. They became humans, then they passed on to ghosts, and they lost the names and
Yeah.
the faces, and yeah, that's what happened with Anna. She is just slowly fading into, I guess, wherever the ghosts are chilling in this void.
Now there's two more. The last one that's outside is just love and. It could have been just love Anna, and she can't even get Anna out right.
That's haunting. Give me the chills.
And then finally, when you're in the cave, ready to seal it all up, there's one more radio signal you can tune into that gives you Morse code. And that one is, "Do you want to play? Banana."
Oh, gosh.
Wow, that come full circle. You could see her evolution, de-evolution of Anna going from human to losing her identity to becoming one of the entities that want to play a game now.
Early on, when you would hear something, it would sound like when the ghosts would talk, it's like words that are pulled from different things. Like they're not all just one person talking. It's like there's this broadcast they took a word out of, and another one they took a word out of and mix them together like the ransom note, but in audio form.
I also am going to make sure that in the show notes for this episode, that there is a link to a interesting documentary about the augmented reality game, so you can see where the augmented reality game ended up taking people and how that all played out at the very end. I think it's worth your time. It's about a 20-minute view on YouTube, and it gives you a little bit of the story I've just given you, and then some more beyond. It's really pretty incredible, the things that the developers and the person behind the Twitter handle X-Ray that was guiding them down the augmented reality game were able to do for them.
Yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
So you're saying it goes deeper than those things that we just covered? Because to me, that was like really super deep. Like I apparently missed so much in this game.
So OXENFREE is just chock full of little nuggets. I think I've covered the majority of the obvious things, but the deeper you look, the more you can find. For example, I mentioned that / XX TAC XM BXKAUTX cipher that was included as you woke up on the lakeside.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that showed up, people were immediately like, oh, that means something. Let's go crack it. And the developers have said, yeah, it was supposed to mean something, but that was back when our ARG was going to be a lot smaller, and we ended up having to toss like all of our ideas. It actually doesn't mean anything.
That's funny.
And at the same time, because of people and their code cracking abilities and the human ability to find patterns even when there aren't, there are solutions for what that might mean that all make perfect sense. You can look at it and say, okay, Maggie was a cryptographer and she was in the military. So if we pull out this military code book from that time period, we can see that BX means this and KAU means this and TX means a transmission. And so this is actually the coded signal that she sent to start the bombing run or something. And you're like, okay, that sounds totally believable. And yet, it doesn't really mean anything. And here are the developers saying, yeah, it isn't actually that thing. So the deeper you look, the more you will find. But at certain points, you're just going to be finding stuff that isn't real.
Yeah, right.
And there's no way to know when that point is.
That's fascinating. There's very few games that have such a widespread, they go into all these different areas, like the ARG, and they have all these, subtexts and the Morse code stuff, and like all these, the cryptographs, and just, everything that is associated with this. Like, how did all this develop?
Yeah. So they did talk about this because, obviously they've been very successful with this game. So they've gone on to do Ask Me Anythings on Reddit and done developer commentaries. Digging from that's where I found a lot of good information for these discussions. In one of them, they talked about going through the process of creating the ARG and the Twitter account that they had a person running. I won't spoil who was running the Twitter account to put those clues out there. But they're like, we need to be able to put out clues that they can get but are complicated enough. And when we started this, they expected like 20 people maybe to play the game and enjoy it and maybe start playing this ARG. And over 400 people were active participants in the Discord where they were cracking all the codes to try and figure out what the ARG was. And they're like, this thing is so much bigger than we ever expected it to be.
That's wild. The
game was so much bigger than they expected the game to be. They self-published. But as things were getting to the end, they ended up getting some help from Skybound. Kirkman was involved and was like, hey, this is good. Let me help. And so they have a production credit as well. And it helped really get them that extra reach. And I think that's probably what helped out with some of these things. But the ARG took on an extra life because it got so much bigger. And the game itself is going to have a bigger life than the developers really anticipated at first, because Kirkman's team over at Skybound have decided that the stories and universe is interesting enough that it warrants having more stuff done in it.
Mm-hmm.
The developers have talked about the idea of prequels or sequels or whatever, but the last I heard is that the production company Skybound was working on a television show, a miniseries of things to happen in the OXENFREE universe.
Awesome.
Oh, that would be so cool.
That would be.
This is something that's already been mentioned in the Discord, the OXENFREE Game Channel Discord. You can join that over at discord.io/AH101 and look for the Game Club OXENFREE channel. We were discussing that Night School Studios has their next game coming out next month. And it's going straight into Game Pass.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
So everyone, I think we're going to have a lot of fun playing that one, right?
Yeah.
What do you know about it?
The only thing that I know right now is that it's a story of two friends who have gone to hell and need to outdrink Satan to get back to life. So they're going on a bender in hell.
What?
But this sounds very different. Is this a point and click? Is this an action adventure?
I don't know. That's all I know. You now know as much as I do.
Do you know what it's called?
I did see it. It's called After Party, I think.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Okay.
All right then, guys. I really want to say again, one more time, thank you for joining me on our exploration of OXENFREE and for joining the entire AH101 community for this game club. I hope you guys have enjoyed the time here recording as well as playing. I hope everyone in the community has enjoyed playing and get something extra from our experiences here. I want to thank you guys specifically, PeteRTX and Carpe Adam 79, and of course Freemhole for bringing us your insights on your experiences playing through the game. It's important to have fresh eyes when you do this. I've played this game many times, and I've dug deep into the game, and I can show you a lot of these things, but without you to experience it anew, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, and I hope you've enjoyed our discussions of it, even though I feel like we're fledglings in this game compared to like this vast oracle of knowledge that you have about it.
It's all worth it because, 4-star game, but I want people to play it, and these are the reasons why. It is worth playing, it's worth experiencing. There's just too much here to have fun with.
It's absolutely amazing. Really is just how deep it goes, how much that they put into this, how all these little things that can be easily overlooked and the game is still great. But if you dig into it and peel it back and see how much more is there, it's just unreal. The time, the effort, the care that they took is really amazing.
Exactly. You know you have a good game when our discussions last longer than the actual play time of the game.
Yeah, if you're running through this pretty quickly, you can complete a single playthrough in 3 or 4 hours probably. And yeah, we've definitely spent more than that talking about it because there's just that much to talk about. All right, guys, one more time, thank you for joining me, and we'll be back eventually with another game club. I don't know if it'll be Walkapale or someone else or even me, but this feature I think is going to come back, and we just got to bring out the next game that's going to inspire the right level of discussion. Until then, guys, take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.